What's going on, everybody, and welcome to the first episode of the 2-on-0 Hockey Show. Your two analysts, Carter Bentavenga and Andrew Marisi, with nothing in the way, standing between us and covering the greatest game in the world, hockey. Well, Andrew, it's nice to finally be on here. It's nice to finally be streaming. Before we get started, we just want to give a big thank you to Linda, Mac, and everyone here at the Northeast Streaming Sports Network for giving us such an amazing opportunity to work on this show. It's really something that we've been wanting to look at for a long, long time, and now we finally get to live out our reality, making hockey content for everybody to see. So, Andrew, welcome to the show, man. Just kind of give us a rundown on how you got into hockey, how you started. I know you play, but kind of just give us an update on both your playing days and your fandom.
Yeah, so thank you very much. Obviously, I love to do this stuff. A little bit of background on myself. Me and you, we had a radio show in high school, and that's kind of really where I started. I kind of just joined the class just because I was like, you know what, screw it. I just need the class with someone, but I actually really enjoyed it. And that's kind of where I got my passion from, just broadcasting, journalism, and, stuff like that. But yeah, hockey, I've kind of been, really following it ever since I was probably 6 or 7 years old. My dad just took me to a Ranger Panther game. I still remember that game to this day. And, just from there, I kind of just fell in love with the sport. And I'd say over the past probably 6 or 7 years, I've kind of been focusing on it, seeing who the best players were in the league, who the best goalies were in the league, who's hot, who's not right now. But yeah, as you mentioned before, I also play hockey too. I've been playing for about, I think, since 7th grade, and I'm in my sophomore year of college. So I don't know the math right away, but I'll let someone else do that. But yeah, I'm very excited to be on the show.
Well, thankfully for us, there's not a ton of math that has to be involved here. So thankfully, we're just sticking to hockey.
Yep.
So with that said, the NHL's trade deadline was today, and Andrew, we had quite a bit of action here. And we're going to start with a move that was made not quite on deadline day, but a few days before. Obviously, it was rumored that Buffalo was going to start selling pretty early on. I think that a lot of people really, expected them to sell right away. And the first piece to fall was Eric Staal. Oh, I'm a poet and I didn't know it, I guess. Eric Staal from the Buffalo Sabres to the Montreal Canadiens. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, overall, well, let me just tell you the trade at first. It was Eric Staal goes to Montreal in exchange for a 2021 third and a 5th round draft choice. I think that's a pretty fair trade for both teams. Eric Staal, obviously, he's not in his prime. His prime was probably when it back in his days in Carolina. But I mean, he's still not that bad of a player. I believe it was his second year in Minnesota. Yes, he put up 76 points, and that was only 4 years ago, not even 3 or 4 years ago. So
I think he was an all-star that season too.
Yeah, pretty sure he was. Obviously, he still has potential. He is getting up there in age. He is 36 years old right now. But, I mean, I guess it's a pretty fair trade. His stats in Buffalo weren't the greatest, but, I mean, it's Buffalo. When you're playing for a team, really as bad as Buffalo, you're not going to get as many points. But, I mean, overall, I think it's a good trade. And his first game in Montreal, he did score an overtime winner, which is pretty cool.
It's definitely cool to say the least. And I think the big thing with, if you're looking outside of the fact that Eric Staal is obviously going to help the Canadian center depth, I think that Eric Staal obviously brings a lot of playoff experience to a fairly young Montreal Canadiens team. Even though they do have some veteran players, obviously we all know Shea Weber, we know Carey Price, we know even Brendan Gallagher, who I mean he's still in his late 20s, I believe, so he's still a fairly young guy to say the
Tyler
least.
Toffoli
But
as well.
Tyler Toffoli, Stanley Cup champion. Um, and Eric Stoll, I like this trade for the Canadians, but I don't think he'll stick throughout. I don't think he comes back next season. I also don't know what his contract situation's looking like. I think the big thing here, and I don't think a lot of people are really, really like narrowing in on this just yet, is the fact that I think the fact that they shortened the quarantine from a 14-day to a 7-day really, really interested some of the Canadian teams. And I know before they shortened the quarantine, it was, I believe, I want to say Carolina was the top option for him. I could be wrong.
I believe so. I think I heard something along with that line.
Yeah, so Carolina we're assuming that Carolina was the top option for him, but nonetheless, they wound up shortening the quarantine. Mark Bergevin comes right out. He grabs Eric Staal, essentially steals him for nothing. I mean, a third-round pick and a fifth-round pick in the NHL isn't too great, but I like what the Montreal Canadiens getting back. Like we said, you're getting a lot of playoff experience. You're getting veteran leadership. And he seems to have started out his career in Montreal pretty good with an overtime winner in his first game. So I guess Habs fans will definitely have something to look forward to in the near future. That's for sure. Uh, Andrew, we have another trade to move on to, and I know that this one probably I don't know if you'll want to cover it as much, but I think I'll enjoy this a little bit more. The Islanders were obviously going to be buyers at this year's trade deadline.
Mm-hmm.
Who that piece was going to be, I don't think a lot of people knew. Now we know it's Kyle Palmieri, and they include Travis Zajac in this deal. Your thoughts on this trade for both sides, I guess. Your thoughts.
Yeah, so I'm not gonna go in depth with it. I'm gonna probably have you handle it, since you're an Islander fan. But Kyle Palmieri and Travis Zajac to the New York Islanders in exchange for AJ Greer, Mason Jobst, a 2021 first round pick, and a conditional fourth round pick in 2022. And that conditional fourth round pick becomes a third round pick if the Islanders make it to the Cup this year. But overall, I like the trade for the Islanders. Yes, Kyle Palmieri isn't having his greatest season year this year with the Devils, but we've seen in past, 2-3 years, Palmieri has been very good for the Devils. I wouldn't necessarily say he carried the team, but he was definitely a big addition to that team. I think if they didn't have him, they probably would be as bad as Buffalo, I would assume. But I mean, I really want to hear your thoughts on this, especially the fact that, you're an Islanders fan and, you've been a loyal Islanders fan. So I want to know what, Palmieri and Zajac, what do you think they can do to the team?
See, it's a bit tough to say. I like the way that that Lou thinks. I know a big theme here, and I know this is pretty common amongst GMs in all sports, not just not just in this scenario with Lou Lamoriello. That saying is bet on who you know, and Lou Lamoriello has obviously taken that. He's really he's done some amazing things trading from the New Jersey Devils. Obviously, last year getting Andy Green at the trade deadline, and a lot of people thought they overpaid for Andy Green. And then you move on to the end of the regular season last year, and even the playoff bubble. Andy Green was arguably one of the Islanders' best defensemen. I would put him in the top 3 in terms of how good he was in the Stanley Cup playoffs. So, Lou Lamoriello has a history of trading with his former clubs. He does it again here with New Jersey. See, I don't know. I was mentioning this in the Last Word on Hockey trade deadline special. If you haven't checked that out already, be sure to go check that out on the Northeast Streaming Sports Network page. Kyle Palmieri, he's an interesting piece for me because he's a good offensive player. I'm not going to deny the fact that he's good offensively. I just don't know how he's going to replace Anders Lee in terms of leadership. And I know that, some Islander fans might be out there thinking, well, that's not why you got him. You got him to replace him offensively. And, that's great and all. But what's going to happen now when you're in a tight playoff game you're in a 1-1, 2-2 game, a tie game in the third period. You need that extra boost. You need someone to step up and say, hey, boys, let's go. Come on, like kind of rally the troops a little bit. Anders Lee was that guy for the Islanders. And I don't know if Kyle Palmieri is necessarily going to replace that. Do I think he can score goals like Anders Lee can? Probably. I don't think he'll have the same net front presence either, but I think that Palmieri's got a better shot than Anders Lee does. So he's instantly got him beat there. I'm just a little skeptical right now in terms of the leadership. And I mean, I don't know. Travis Zajak's an interesting piece for me too. I didn't really, I wasn't really watching him too closely. I guess at the end of the day, though, I mean, you're acquiring another bottom six forward, as if the Islanders don't have enough of those already. He's a guy who can win a lot of faceoffs too, and like we mentioned before, a lot of the key moments in playoff hockey are based on the players who have been there before. They've experienced the playoffs before. Andy Green is a guy who he went to the Stanley Cup final with the New Jersey Devils in 2012. So this guy knows how to win hockey games. He knows what the big stage is like. And, Travis Zajac isn't necessarily going to put up the same amount of points as Kyle Palmieri, but I like the value here. I like the thought process from Lou Lamoriello. I don't know. I mean, to be honest, all I really saw us giving up was the first-round pick. AJ Greer and Mason Jobst, as well as they've played, as well as I've seen them play anyway, they're not going to play in the NHL. Let's be honest. They're career AHL forwards at best. I'm assuming that I believe it was a fourth-round pick, right? The Islanders sent over.
It was the conditional fourth, yeah.
Conditional fourth. I don't think that's going to mean anything in the long run.
I mean, you never know. You always see these, drafts.
That is true.
Like Nikita Kucherov, wasn't he drafted in like the third or fifth round or something like that? And he turned out
he was a late round pick.
Yeah, and he's turned out to want to be one of the best players. But what worries me with the Islanders is Palmieri's playoff stats. He doesn't have a lot of experience, I'll be honest. But in 2014-15, he played 16 games with Anaheim. That's that could be like 2 or 3 series. I don't know what it was.
How many games is that again? How many games did you say?
16.
So I'll give that. I think they made the conference final that year.
They probably did. And he put up 3 points.
Ugh.
Oh, excuse me. 4. Ooh.
Oh, sorry. You forgot 1.
Yeah. 1 goal and 3 assists. I mean,
I don't know about that.
And then his most recent one with the Devils in 2017-18, he put up 3 points in 5 games.
To be fair to him, though, with the 2018 series, you're on a Devils team that was
that played against arguably one of the best upcoming teams in hockey in Tampa Bay.
Like they made it to the conference final that year. They were clearly a good team.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you can necessarily blame Palmieri for that. I'm not trying to vouch for him by any stretch of the imagination, but I mean, I don't know. I guess it's just something to keep at the back of your mind, I guess. But
yeah. All right. So moving on to the next trade. I actually kind of want to do a big one. I want to go with the trade that happened last night, probably around, 11 o'clock maybe.
It was Jeff Carter trade.
No, not that one.
What the trade happened last night?
The Taylor Hall trade, the biggest name in trade deadline right now. So the Bruins acquired Taylor Hall and Curtis Lazar from Buffalo in exchange for Anders Bjork and a second-round pick in 2021. Honestly, steal by the Bruins. I'm going to be honest. I gave that trade an A+ for the Bruins. I mean, yeah, Taylor Hall isn't having his greatest year statistically, but if you look at his previous stats, he was a former Hart winner, 2 or 3 years ago with New Jersey?
Yeah.
We know his potential that he can bring to a hockey team. And I think it's the fact that he was on Buffalo that, made him, not that great. I think he has 2 goals and 17 assists. So you put him with a line with probably Charlie Coyle, I think he'll do really good in Boston.
I see him playing with Krejci, if I'm being completely honest. I think they got him to bolster that second line. I do think he's going to do an amazing job at bringing the Bruins some secondary scoring. And I'm going to be completely honest with you. I saw this trade coming together at first, and I saw we both follow a lot of hockey accounts on Instagram, so obviously we've seen all the graphics that people post and stuff like that. And I saw that there was only a second round pick in Anders Bjork on the Buffalo side. I was gonna DM some of these accounts and being like, "Yo, you know you forgot like half of the trade, right? Like, I don't think this is all of it." But no, that was it. That
No,
you
that was all.
like. Here's the thing. I don't get. Uh, okay, I'm gonna start from the top here, right?
Go ahead.
When Taylor Hall first signed in Buffalo, I think the idea obviously was he's going to make us a better team. That didn't happen. Spoiler alert, didn't happen.
No.
Now, I think in the back of their minds, they were thinking, okay, we signed Taylor Hall to a long-term, well, not long-term, but a big, decent-sized contract. It was
I think
1
it was
year, $8 million.
$8 million, yes.
Yeah.
And in this trade, just sorry to interrupt, they did
I
retain
agree.
half of his salary.
Okay, yeah, so cut that down to 4. Now, I think the idea was Taylor Hall is going to boost his stats playing with Jack Eichel. And if they do decide to trade him at the deadline, you're going to get at least a first-round pick out of him.
That's what everyone assumed. At least a first-round pick and a top prospect.
And now I also think that, I have a couple of different opinions on this, but I'm going to start with this one. After all of that trouble that they didn't go public with it, so I can't say they made a fuss about it, but how do you only take a second rounder and a borderline AHL forward for a guy who won the Hart Trophy back in 2018? I don't I'm
I don't
shocked.
understand that trade. Yeah, again, like you mentioned before, when you were saying you were gonna DM those hockey accounts and be like, "Where's the rest of it?" I thought the exact same thing. I was with a bunch of my friends, and I just get the trade, and I'm like, "Oh wow!" And I was like, "Okay, it's probably still developing." And over the next course of, I don't know, probably 30 minutes,
And it's just like,
it was just the same thing, and I'm like, "Wow, like what a steal!"
See, here's what I'm thinking, right? Maybe I'm thinking one of two things. One, maybe there was no first round pick being offered. Maybe the Buffalo Sabres were just trying to take the offer that they thought was best. Although here's the thing though, and we're going to get into this guy in a little bit. If there were teams that were willing to give up first round picks for, obviously we saw the Islanders do it with Kyle Palmieri. We saw the Maple Leafs do it with Nick Foligno. We saw the Lightning do it with David Savard. How do you not get a first round pick for this guy then?
I honestly have no idea. I mean, the only reason why I can see why Boston wouldn't want to give him a first round pick is because he has 2 goals this year. But I mean
yeah, but like he won the MVP
fair,
3 years
he
ago.
won the MVP in 2017, 2018. That's
so
like 3 or 4 years ago, which is not that long ago. So we still know his potential. And yeah, Arizona, and even in Arizona, he didn't do that bad. He 27 points in 35 games. That's not bad. That's not bad at all. He has 1 bad year, and he's not worth a first rounder anymore. I don't think so. I think this is a great trade for the Bruins. And again, like, all right, you know what? Let me ask you this: would you rather have this trade or Hall to the Bruins for a first round pick? That's it. Do you think that would have been a better trade for Buffalo?
It depends. It depends. I think a first round pick would have been more valuable. I think it would have been probably more eye catching than than what they got. But you also got to factor in here. Actually, I mean, I can't even say that. I don't even know if Boston's going to make the playoffs. To be honest, I mean, they're on the border of missing it.
It's going to be the 4th spot is either going to be the Bruins, the Flyers, or the Rangers.
Well, see,
I would say now, the Bruins probably have the best shot at making it. But, I mean, any team can go on a hot streak. You never know.
That is true. We've seen the Rangers do it. I mean, I think they should have made it last year.
Even last year, right before COVID, they were on a hot run. They were on like I think it was like a 12-game point streak or something like that. It was like insane.
Something like that, yeah. But, see, here's the thing, though. Maybe that's why Boston didn't want to give up a first-round pick. I think they had interest in Hall from the start. Going back to last offseason, I heard a rumor that Taylor Hall.
Wasn't there a rumor that he would sign with Boston?
Yeah, he wanted to sign there, but I don't think that at the time, I don't think they could make it work. I don't think they had the salary cap to really make this whole thing work. So now you're looking at it as, they're going to make a move for Hall at the deadline, and sure enough, they do. I don't know if Boston is so crazy about moving their first-round pick, though. I mean,
Yeah,
like we
no,
said
I can
before,
definitely see that.
they're on the border of making or missing the playoffs. So hypothetically speaking, say they miss the playoffs and Buffalo has their first round pick now. That rule is still in place. Where I know they changed it recently in the draft lottery, but that rule is still in place where anybody can win a spot in the top three. So you
Mm-hmm.
might think that a first round pick doesn't mean anything, at least right now. But hypothetically speaking, say this, we've seen the Rangers do it over the last 2 seasons. You
Mm-hmm.
can jump really, really far in the draft lottery.
Yeah, like again, last year, Rangers were basically a playoff team. They were in the qualifying rounds. Yes, they did lose, but they were probably ranked top 15 maybe in the NHL last year, right before COVID, and
I
they
would
got the
argue.
first overall pick.
Yeah.
Lafreniere, like that's crazy. Yeah, Lafreniere is not doing the greatest this year, but again, look at the year
Well,
before. I think they were ranked like ninth, and they got the second overall pick. Like that's just crazy to me.
he's also 19, though. You got to give him time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, everyone said the same thing about Jack Hughes last year. They're like, "Oh, he's a bust. He's a bust. He's a bust." And he's been doing pretty decent this year. And everyone's like, "Oh, wow, look at him." But
See, I call him a bust, but I say it jokingly, of course.
yeah, of course.
But I don't know. And, we're going to wrap this up, at least the Hall segment of it, really quickly here. I was also wondering why they decided to make this move at midnight before the trade deadline. And here's one thing that I'm thinking that I kind of want to hear your thoughts of. Maybe they just took the first thing that came to them because they wanted Hall out ASAP. Do you think it's possible that maybe they just decided to take the first thing that was presented to them because they wanted this whole thing over? I mean, let's face it here. Taylor Hall was probably the most sought after trade asset at this year's trade deadline. Debatably, it could have been Kyle Palmieri, debatably, but I still think it was Taylor Hall, regardless of the season that he was having in Buffalo. Maybe the Sabres were just sick of everything that was going on and they just wanted to get him out.
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of a tough decision. I don't want to speak on this too long, but I mean, it's definitely a possibility. Buffalo, probably was just like, all right, hey, what's the best you can offer? And then Bruins are like, all right, here you go. And they were like, you know what? Screw it. Doesn't matter. I'll take it. I'll take whatever. But I mean, I think they probably should have listened to more teams, at the deadline because I feel like they probably could have gotten a better, a better draft choice. I mean, kind of a transition here. We saw Washington acquire Anthony Mantha from the Red Wings for Jacob Vrana, Richard Panik, a 2021 first-round pick, and a 2022 second-round pick. I think Hall is more valuable than Mantha, and you get a second-round pick, and Anders Bjork, who's a fourth-line player at best.
At best, I would say AHL. I don't even think if you just saying if you don't crack the Sabres roster though, I mean you should just rethink your career as a hockey player at that point.
just retire at that point. You know what?
I mean, it's not even worth it anymore. But you know what? We're gonna move on here. We're gonna move on to another team that normally the Bruins would face if this was a regular season. Of course, this isn't a regular season by any means. The defending Stanley Cup champs make a very notable move. They acquire a defenseman who a lot of people expected to go to Winnipeg. I thought he was going to go to Winnipeg. I know some people maybe had him as a Montreal Canadian. Just to a team that needed defensive help. And he went to a team that kind of needed defensive help a little bit. Not quite the team that everybody thought, though. He goes to the Tampa Bay Lightning. Your thoughts on this move immediately when you first saw it? I know we were playing hockey too when we first saw it.
Exactly. We were, me and Carter, we're playing hockey, whatever, taking a little break or whatever, and then we both check our phones and we're like, oh wow, David Savard to the Lightning. Like that was just first initial was shock because I was like, damn, Savard to the Lightning. I thought it was interesting. Like obviously, they have probably the best defenseman in the league right now, Victor Hedman. And then another young star in Mikhail Sergachev. But, I mean, the full trade here is David Savard and Brian Lashoff to Tampa Bay. This is a 3-team trade between Tampa, Columbus, and Detroit. Columbus received the first-round pick in the 2021 NHL draft and the third-round pick in the 2022 NHL draft. And Detroit just received a fourth-round pick in 2021. Honestly, overall, I give every team an A on this trade. I think this is a solid trade for all teams. Obviously you get Savard, who's not an offensive defenseman by any means, but I would say he's a solid either two-way or defensive defenseman. Would you agree?
I would agree with that, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think he has the same offensive upside. I'm sorry to interrupt you, by the way. I think going back to last year, I think Kevin Shattenkirk was better than him offensively. I don't think he matches to what Shattenkirk does, but I think he's a better two-way defender.
No,
So
I can definitely agree with that, but yeah. And then Columbus receiving a first-round pick and then a third-round pick. Again, I think that's a fair deal. I mean, I don't know if I would give a first round for David Savard.
It's debatable.
Again, it's like I'm going back to the Hall trade. Like, if you're gonna give Hall a fourth-line player and a second round player and a fourth-line player, I think Savard should have probably gotten a second, maybe a third. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on this trade?
I think the big thing that I'm taking away from this is right now, Tampa Bay is currently paying David Savard only 25% of his current contract. Because one thing that I don't think you mentioned it yet, but if you didn't, I'll mention it right now, that the Blue Jackets are retaining 50% of Savard's salary. And when he was dealt to Detroit, Red Wings legend, he was retained another 25%. So Tampa is essentially getting David Savard at 75% off of his current cap hit.
That's not bad at all.
Those are the kind of moves. I know a lot of people were wondering, like, where did they get this cap space from? Like, how do you acquire a guy like David Savard?
Think about it. Kucherov's on that long-term injury reserve.
Not even that. It's smart moves like this that get that done. And
that is true.
You can kind of debate the whole first-round pick for David Savard thing. I don't know if I would have given a first-round pick for David Savard, but I mean, I guess if that's what Tampa saw fit, then I guess that's.
If they want to win another cup and they think they know what they want to add to win another cup, by all means, do it.
I got news for you. I think they had the best chance at winning the cup out of anybody. And now, considering you're adding a guy like David Savard to your already loaded defensive lineup, I think they got a pretty good shot at going back to back. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, no, I think it's very possible for them to go back to back.
Well, we'll see. And now we're going to move on to a team that actually Columbus knocked out of the Stanley Cup qualifiers last time around. The Toronto Maple Leafs. The Leafs were an interesting team at this year's deadline. They wanted to add a top six forward. Nobody really knew who they were going to add. Now we know that name. It's Nick Foligno. I don't know if I really predicted Foligno leaving Columbus. I mean, I don't know. I kind of want to hear your thoughts on this before I really dive into anything here.
So I wouldn't say I saw him leaving Columbus, but I definitely didn't see him going to Toronto. I don't know. I honestly thought he was going to go to the Islanders. I feel like he would be a good fit for the Islanders core. But, I mean, Toronto's looking good.
Yeah.
Especially, and you add here, they did add David Riddick as well, backing up Jack Campbell, who's just been insane for some reason this year. But the trade was Toronto gets Nick Foligno and Stefan Noesen, and Columbus received the 2021 first-round pick, 2022 fourth-round pick, and then the Sharks, which are the third team in the deal, received the fourth-round pick in 2021 from the Maple Leafs. Again, with the first-round pick. I would probably replace it with a second.
Yeah.
Again, I don't want to keep going back to the Hall situation, but I feel like I have to. Hall was probably the best player out of the trade deadline this year. And you get a second-round pick out of him, and then you're throwing guys away like Nick Foligno, and then you're giving them a first-round pick. I just don't see that. I can see a second-round pick, but a first-round pick, again, I'm not a huge fan of. But, I mean, overall, I think for every team, this is a good trade.
It doesn't make a ton of sense. I don't really see the whole appeal of giving a first-round pick for Nick Foligno. Like you said, I feel like a second probably would have gotten the job done, but I guess it also depends on what you're looking from if you're the Blue Jackets. If you're selling a guy like Nick Foligno,
then you would want a first-round pick, of course.
Oh, 100%. I also don't think you want to undervalue your captain. I think that's something that the you got to consider if you're thinking about this from a Blue Jackets standpoint. right? You don't want to sell off your captain for nothing and then have it be like, well, what value did you get back?
Well, let me ask you this. There's been reports that Foligno wanted to get out of Columbus to win a cup, but he was going to re-sign with Columbus. Do you think that could be? Do you think that could be possible?
I could see it happening 100%. 100% I could. And I think that one thing that we're not really talking about here, we're just talking about these players as players. We're not talking about their lives outside of hockey. And so it was reported that Nick Foligno is going to Toronto, obviously, and due to all of the, such the strict lockdown that Ontario is in right now, his family is opting to stay back in Columbus. So, I think Foligno would want to reunite with his family sooner or later, unless he plans on staying in Toronto for the long term, which I don't really see happening. I see Nick Foligno as a career Columbus Blue Jacket. I don't really care what team he goes to, and if he wins a Stanley Cup, then he wins a Stanley Cup. That's a story for another day when it eventually happens. I don't know. It's gonna be weird to see Foligno in a Leafs jersey. But he did mention though that it is kind of cool to see him kind of living up his dad's legacy, right? We all know his father played for the Toronto Maple Leafs as well, and they were part of that team in 1993 that made it to the conference final. So maybe there's another deep playoff run for a Foligno in Toronto. Who knows?
Yeah,
But
I also want to look at his playoff stats again. Not the best. In 51 career playoff games, he has 9 goals and 13 assists for 22 points. But I don't think they added him for points. I think they
no.
added him for veteran presence, especially like the playoffs. Again, I said 8 years in the playoffs. You have playoff experience. If you're playing 51 games, that's pretty impressive. So I think they added him for obviously veteran presence. Maybe because obviously we all know Toronto is a very young team. They have one of the youngest teams in the league, and in the past 3 years they've gotten what they lost in the first round to Buffalo 2 times and then Washington once. So I think this will at least make Toronto to the Eastern Conference Final, in my opinion.
See, it's tough. We were talking about this on the last Word on Hockey show. I'm not sold on this Maple Leafs team just yet. I want to see how Foligno plays in the regular season first. Who knows? He could step into the playoffs and be a really, really good player for them. We don't know. I think, like we said before, though, Foligno was a leadership because of his veteran experience. I think he comes into that team during the regular season anyway. I'm not even talking about the playoffs just yet. I think he steps into that lineup, and I think he's a solid piece for them. I could see him putting up a lot of good numbers. I would imagine he's playing alongside of. See, I don't know. It's tough to tell. I don't know if I would take Galchenyuk off of the Matthews line just yet. So I'm assuming he would play with Tavares and William Nylander when he eventually gets healthy. That top 6 is going to be unreal. Unreal. Because think, you're going to have Galchenyuk, Matthews, Marner on your first line, Foligno, Tavares, and Nylander on your second. That's a pretty good top 6 right there.
Yeah, I'm actually looking at Daily Faceoff right now, which is a website where it gives you line combinations and stuff. And it doesn't say anywhere he would fit on in here, but in my opinion, I would probably put Foligno where Ilya Mikheyev's spot is with John Tavares and Zach Hyman.
Okay.
I think that would be pretty fair for him. If not, then I would say put him with Thornton and Kerfoot. I
could see that happening. I think that's a good spot for him. I also think he'll improve their power play quite a bit too.
Yes.
Because as much as Tavares tries to, imitate this kind of player, I don't think he's the kind of guy who's going to go to the front of the net and score those greasy goals.
No.
Foligno is.
Yeah, Foligno, he can be physical when he wants to be. Again, I would say he's probably kind of. I don't even know who I would compare him to. He's honestly one of a kind, Nick Foligno, if I'm going to be honest.
I agree 100%. I'm not trying to, be biased here or anything, but I think he would have made a great fit on the Islanders. I do. I really like the way Foligno plays. I think that he would have, played a big role in a Barry Trotz type system. But you know what? I guess that's I don't know. That's just how it goes sometimes. So
Yeah.
can't
All right.
complain.
And now another addition to the Leafs roster, David
I
Riddick.
just realized, yeah, we haven't even mentioned David
Yeah,
Riddick
we
yet.
didn't even manage David Riddick. The trade was David Riddick to Toronto from Calgary in exchange for a third-round pick in 2022.
Okay.
Again, I feel like that's an even trade throughout. David Riddick this year not having his greatest year. He's 4-7-1, which obviously that's not that great of a record. But I mean, his save percentage is .904, and his goals against is .290. Not the worst stats, but not the best stats. But he's going to be a backup on the Maple Leafs right now.
I would argue so, yeah.
Yeah. So I want to hear your thoughts on this.
See, I don't know. I mean, I think he'll make a good tandem with Jack Campbell as of right now, who's red hot, by the way. I don't think anybody can really touch him in terms of
I think
how good
he's
he's
on like an
been.
11-game winning streak or something like that.
Yeah, 11-0 as of right now, I believe. And they actually play tonight in about 24 minutes against the Montreal Canadiens. So I don't know if Jack Campbell's projected to start, but I imagine he is.
I can actually check right now for you, but you can speak as we.
Yeah, just kind of provide an update when you get one. I'm more concerned to see what's going to happen if and when Freddie Anderson does come back. I don't see what's the injury situation looking like with Anderson right now. Do we know when he's set to return just yet, or?
I honestly don't think so, but Jack Campbell is starting tonight.
Okay, so it is Campbell. Okay. Yeah. So now, say Anderson does come back for the final week of the regular season plus playoffs. That is going to be an amazing set of three goaltenders right there in Frederik Andersen, David Riddick, and Jack Campbell. All three of which probably deserve to be a starter in the NHL.
And
I know that might be.
what
Oh,
are you saying?
you wanna? What are you saying?
So speaking of Anderson, 2 days ago, Maple Leafs head coach Sheldon Keefe actually said there's no timeline for Anderson's injury. So he might not even be back this season. Who knows? But again, he could be back in 2 weeks, but he could be also back in, maybe playoff time.
That's still a fantastic tandem, though, if you're the Toronto Maple Leafs.
I would feel very confident.
Yeah. And to be honest, I thought Toronto was going to go after a guy maybe like a Jonathan Bernier, James Reimer, maybe even a Ryan Miller. Some of these goaltenders who might not be as big of a name as David Riddick. I was surprised to see Riddick to Toronto. I didn't know that the Leafs necessarily had interest in him, but I do. I think him and Campbell are going to make a really, really great tandem. And I think going back to what I was saying before, all three of those guys, Anderson, Riddick, and Campbell, arguably right now deserve to start on an NHL team. And I know that some people might, not feel the same about Jack Campbell, but he's proven himself, as of right now anyway, he's proven that he can start in the National Hockey League and make an impact.
Yeah, he could definitely be a number one starter for the Maple Leafs. So I want to move on to another trade. Another trade with Buffalo. Brandon Montour going to Florida. In exchange for a 2021 third-round pick. Again, I probably said this for almost every trade, but I feel like it's a fair trade. Obviously, Florida losing Aaron Ekblad a couple of weeks ago due to a gruesome injury. Wish all the best for him. And adding a guy like Brandon Montour, who's obviously not as good, offensively or defensively, but he's a good upgrade for whoever they had replacing him.
I would say so. I think that another thing with Montour here, I think Florida needed an upgrade on the blue line. Obviously, we just talked about Ekblad going down, but outside of Aaron Ekblad, though, this Panthers blue line isn't too impressive. I mean, who else was there that was having like a fairly decent season besides Aaron Ekblad?
Maybe Yandel, maybe?
I mean, I don't know. I think Yandel could still be a number one defenseman, but I don't think he can do it for a full season.
Yeah, like right now, the defensive pairing for the Panthers without Montour is Gustav Forsling, Mackenzie Wagner, Keith Yandel, Radko Gudas, Kevin Kontonen, and then Anton Strawman.
That's not good enough to win in the
That's
playoffs, in my
no, that
opinion.
like yeah, I know they are one of the best teams right now in the league, but that's not going to get you far into the playoffs. They say defense wins championships, and when your best player is Keith Yandle, who, no offense to Keith Yandle, great player, but he's just not a top defenseman that can lead a team to the playoffs,
I don't think he is
or
either.
at least far into the playoffs. So I think the Brandon Montour trade was good for them. He's probably going to take, I don't even know whose spot, maybe Kevin Condon. He'd probably take his spot, be paired with Stroman, I assume, but I don't know. I think it's a good trade.
I think it's a decent trade, and I also think that, um, you know, obviously Florida was looking for an upgrade. They wound up getting Montour. I thought they were going to wind up claiming Shane Gostisbehere when he went on waivers from the Philadelphia Flyers a few weeks ago. I don't know why that never really happened. I thought Gostisbehere would have fit the mold that Joel Quenneville likes to play. But you know what? I mean, I'm not the GM of the Florida Panthers. I'm not gonna make those decisions. I'm also not gonna criticize him. I think that Brandon Montour is a solid defenseman. He might not be on the same offensive level that a guy like Shane Gostisbehere is, or even a guy like Aaron Ekblad for that matter. But you know, I think a lot of what the good things that Montour does were kind of overwhelmed by the fact that he was on such a, I don't know how to put this. You know what? I'm just gonna say it. Historically bad Sabres team. Let's be honest. I mean, like they
No,
were
yeah,
historically
they were
bad.
on what I think it wasn't considered a losing streak; it was a winless streak. But that 18 game stretch or whatever they had, that was something that we might not see again.
Something that I don't think anybody wants to see again. I know.
No,
I think by the 18th game, I think a lot of people were just rooting for Buffalo to win. Like
on
they just
I
wanted it
was.
to.
I'll be honest with you. I mean, especially as a fan of the Rangers, and they were playing Philly against the game where they did win. I'm like, yeah, go Buffalo, please win, win.
Well, I guess we'll kind of see what happens. But I mean, I don't know. I don't know how to feel about the Montour trade yet. I think it'll be kind of like a wait and see type thing. I wouldn't be shocked though if they decide to play him on that top pair. I think him
It
and
wouldn't
Aaron.
surprise me.
I think him and Yandel might make like a really low key, like good pairing.
I can definitely see that.
But I don't know. I guess it's kind of a wait and see type thing. But see what
Mm-hmm.
happens, I suppose. Well, now we got another veteran on the move, and the Colorado Avalanche needed help in the crease. Devin Dubnyk from the San Jose Sharks is their answer. Andrew, your immediate thoughts?
Um, well, obviously Devin Dubnyk didn't get a lot of spotlight this year. I believe it was in the offseason. He did get traded to the San Jose Sharks. Um, and I feel like people thought that him and Jones were going to split time, but I feel like Jones has been really good this year for the Sharks, and I believe the Sharks are only a couple points out of a playoff spot. So I mean, again, his stats not really the greatest this year. 3-9-2 with a .898 save percentage and a 3.18 goals against average. But I mean, I think the Avs really just needed some backup goaltender that they needed. Obviously, Philip Grubauer is probably a Vezina candidate this year, going off for the Avalanche. But again, I think they just needed, just to add someone, like Devin Dubnyk, and they did. And only for a fifth round pick in Greg Padden, I don't think it was that bad. I mean, I don't know.
It doesn't really, doesn't jump off the page to me
No,
as a
it's
trade that's
nothing
gonna.
special to me at all. It's just that the Avalanche acquiring a backup goaltender, like, okay.
But this is another team though where I thought they were gonna go after somebody else. And with the Maple Leafs, I was saying that in a good way. In the Avalanche, this is kind of a bad way because no offense to to Devin Dubnyk or the Colorado Avalanche, but I don't think Devin Dubnyk is their answer. I think if Colorado wants to legitimately go far in the playoffs, I don't think because obviously we've seen in the past, and we hope obviously going into this year's playoffs that that Philip Grubauer obviously doesn't get hurt again. Because without Philip Grubauer in the crease, the Avalanche look like a different team.
Yes.
And I don't know if Devin Dubnyk is going to be the guy that can push them over the edge. I think if they would have gotten a guy like maybe a Jonathan Bernier, who again, I mean, he's played in Colorado. He knows how the Avalanche play. Um, Maybe even a James Reimer type of guy. I go back to Ryan Miller again. Basically, the three same options that I had for the Maple Leafs. I don't know. I feel like there were better options out there. I don't feel like they necessarily gave up a lot, but I feel like there were just better options out there for the Avalanche to go after. Maybe that's just my opinion.
And if I'm going to be honest too, one goalie name that you didn't mention that I know since I'm a Rangers fan is Alexander Georgiev. I think Georgiev, I wouldn't mind seeing Georgiev traded. We already have our future goaltender in Igor Shesterkin, whose numbers aren't like his wins losses don't show how good he's played this year. If you look at his goals against average and his save percentage, it's honestly one of the best in the league. I would probably say top 10 right now. But Georgiev, he's a good, decent goalie. I mean, personally, I don't know about you, but I would rather have Georgiev than Devin Dubnyk this year.
Yeah, I would argue Georgiev's been okay. I don't think he's been.
This year he hasn't been. He's not doing insane, but he's not doing awful.
Actually, no, I can't say that. Against the Islanders, he looks like the second coming of Martin Brodeur.
I think he's like 7-1 with like a 950 save percentage or something like that against the Islanders. He's just been insane this year. I don't know why.
If you wanted to trade him, I'm not going to be upset. I mean, like you can trade him. I'm not going to. I don't know. I guess it's something that we can look at down the line.
All right. So I think we're done with Devin Dubnyk trade, and I think I want to go to one more trade that surprised me, and I'm sure it surprised you.
I think we speak for everybody when we say it surprised us.
I don't think anyone saw this coming. The Washington Capitals acquire forward Anthony Mantha from the Detroit Red Wings in exchange for forwards Jacob Vrana, Richard Panik, a 2021 first-round pick, and a 2022 second-round pick. What a steal by Steve Yzerman.
Somebody call the cops. It's like highway robbery.
Yes. And again, I've said it a lot, and I'm going to say it again. What are your thoughts on this blockbuster trade?
Well, I was kind of, I was chilling, just like, on my phone or whatever, thinking, all right, well, the trade deadline's over. There's not going to be any more big trades. I mean,
of course not.
Like I saw, I think Ben Hutton came in to Toronto.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Depth moves like that. And then I see.
And then 20 or 30 minutes after, it's 3 p.m. Just check your phone and just, Mantha to the Caps.
I follow Kevin Weeks on Twitter. He's a fairly reliable source when it comes to breaking things like this. And I saw that he said Panik and Vrana to the Red Wings in exchange for Mantha. And I was like, oh, okay. I mean, I don't know if I would have done that, but
even like that right there, I was just like,
And then the first round pick comes out, and the second round pick comes out. And I'm trying to break this all down in my head, but in reality, I don't know what the Washington Capitals are doing.
No idea what they're doing. And it's not even they're on a verge to be in a playoff spot. They're already in the playoffs. They're most likely either going to be a 1 or 2 seed. So I don't understand why you need to add it. I understand Anthony Mantha is a very good player. But the fact that you're giving up Jacob Vrana, Richard Panik, a first and a second round pick is just way too much for me. I probably would have just done Mantha for Vrana straight up, if I'm going to be honest.
See, even that I debate on a little bit.
Yeah, I was about to say, even that's But adding, Richard Panik, who's I think he's done pretty decent this year. Let me look up his stats real quick. I believe he just came back from injury. But
I was going to say, I think the fact that you're giving up Panik, I think that maybe they saw that, I know the Capitals got Michael Raffl from the Philadelphia Flyers as well, so maybe they saw that as kind of his replacement, and now you bring in Mantha as Vrana's replacement.
Yeah, actually, I lied. This year, not having the greatest season, just 9 points in 36 games. But again, he's adding a veteran. He will add a veteran presence to the Detroit team, who's obviously a very young team. And if I'm going to be honest, I think in the next 5 years, Detroit's going to be back on top.
I don't know about back on top. I think they'll contend for a playoff spot. I don't know how good they'll be. I think it depends on how these prospects come along. I know obviously they have Mo Sider in the
I'm really high on him. I think
he's a
he's
good
going to be
player.
a very, very good defensive player for that team.
I know a lot of people are kind of skeptical of the move at first. A lot of people were kind of
Yeah,
like
I was
who
shocked
is
when they
this guy?
first drafted him. Yeah,
But I don't know. I mean, I'm really excited to see who's that kid they drafted this year? Raymond, Lucas Raymond.
Lucas Raymond, he's going to
He's gonna
be
be good.
very good. And another Swedish player who's he reminds me a lot like Philip Forsberg.
Okay. I
I'd
like
say maybe just like a bigger body, but I'd say overall he reminds me of Philip Forsberg.
that. Okay. That's not a bad comparison.
I don't know.
Well,
I mean, personally, I wouldn't say it was a bad comparison.
well, I mean, I'm still trying to figure out like what the motive was behind this. I mean,
Yeah, again, yeah, like that you're already in a playoff spot. You're either going to get the 1 or 2 seed. You're doing phenomenal, and I just don't see. I know they weren't the Caps aren't a huge fan of Vrana. I believe they sat him down a couple games as a healthy scratch, but again, they just gave up way too much, in my opinion.
yeah, I don't know about this one. I think this is going to be a trade that, granted, the first round pick it is for this year, right? It's for 2021.
It is for 2021. Yes.
I don't know how thrilled I am about that. I mean, it's still a first round pick, sure, but first of all, the Capitals are going to be a playoff team, so you're
Yes.
instantly looking at the back half of the first round.
I'd say like 20 plus.
Yeah, and this also isn't a very deep draft. This is a draft that I think is very top heavy, and once you get to the later part of the first round, it falls off of a cliff essentially.
Yes. Like the 2015 draft, you can get anyone you want at any position, basically.
That was
And
different. You're pulling like franchise talents
that's
out of
what,
like the
well,
seventh
I'm
round.
just comparing it, to a 2015 year to one like a 2021, where I feel like again you mentioned it's not going to be that great of a draft class.
Well, I guess we'll see what happens, but I don't know how to feel. I mean, I have a feeling that we could be looking at this trade a few years down the line, and this could be like a steal for the Detroit Red Wings, especially if you manage to pick up a steal in the first round and a solid player in the second round to add to your already deep prospect pool. Like, this could be a trade a few years down the line where a lot of people were like, they gave up a first round, like the first round pick turned out to be some star, and
Mhm.
they're like, oh well, Washington, what are you doing trading that first round pick? But
Well, let me say something too. Washington doesn't go that deep into the playoffs. The only time they've ever been deep was when they won the cup in 2018. Other
yeah,
than that, they're either a first or second round exit. So yeah, it's still in the later part of the draft, but it's probably going to be around the 20 to like 23 range, which is still not bad at all.
I can see that, and I think
I
that's a good
mean,
spot too.
this year it looks like the Caps are either going to lock up the first or the second seed. So in my opinion, they're either playing one of the Capitals, not the Capitals, excuse me, the Bruins, Flyers, Rangers, or Penguins. And I think they could beat any of those teams, but I think they'll face the Islanders, and I think the Islanders will beat them.
See, I don't know. I'm still skeptical about that, but I don't know. Guess we'll see what happens. I guess it's a wait and see type thing. But well, I think we got all we needed to cover in terms of the trade deadline, and now obviously since it's Monday, we're gonna go ahead and announce the NHL's 3 stars of the week. Rupe Hintz, third star of the week, I should say, from the Dallas Stars. 2 goals, 6 assists for 8 points in 4 games played. Second star goes to Austin Matthews. He had 6 goals, 2 assists for 8 points in 3 games, including a hat trick against the Ottawa Senators to reach the 30-goal plateau. And we have Connor Hellebuck rounding it out with the first star, a 3-0 record over 3 games and 1 shutout. Well, this has been a lot of fun. And well, I see. I want to talk about Austin Matthews. I could talk about him all day, but I think we should try and save that for another time.
Yeah, I mean, again, just Matthews is probably going to be one of the generational players, that we see. You know, you're not going to see a lot of players like Austin Matthews, you know, in this draft. Not in this draft, but in this generation. So he's definitely a special player.
I would say so 100%. And now, before we get going here, you know, I just have a quick question for you. So, you know, looking back at the trade deadline, it's obviously entertaining to see who gets moved where, to see what teams buy, which teams sell. You have to pick 3 winners and 3 losers from this year's trade deadline. Who are you picking?
Putting me on the spot like that, man. All right, so I'm not going to go in order, but I'm going to start with my winners. I think the Boston Bruins are definitely a winner in this draft. Getting Taylor Hall, Curtis Lazar for a second-round pick and Anders Bjork, I think that's a pretty good trade for them. The Toronto Maple Leafs, you know, acquiring Nick Foligno and David Riddick, I think that's another big trade. And then I think the Islanders. I think I really like the Palmieri and Zajac deal. You know, for basically 2 AHL players, a first and a conditional fourth. I think that's pretty good. And then probably for my 3 losing teams, I think I have to put Washington, even though they really only made 1 trade. I just still think that's a terrible trade. Man, 2 other ones. I
consider putting the Blues in there for losers. I thought the Blues were going to be a lot more active than they were.
Yeah, honestly, yeah. I would probably put the Blues in there, and then I'd probably put Nashville. Because I still don't know how I feel about Nashville. They weren't the greatest, but they're heating it back up. But they could just go on another losing streak, and then think about it. You lose players in free agency. Matthias Ekholm, for example.
I don't really see the appeal with the Nashville Predators. I think at this point you're basically okay. Well, here's the thing. I know that once you get to the playoffs, the motive is, well, anything can happen, right? But like if you're Nashville, you got to play a team that's either Tampa
or Carolina
or Florida even. I don't see the Nashville Predators beating any of those teams in a 7-game series.
And I'm looking at the stats right now, and the Discover Central Division, Carolina is on top with 58. Tampa Bay is right under them, same amount of points, 58. Florida, 56. And then Nashville coming in at 47. That's a big gap from Florida to Nashville. That's almost 10 points right there. And Chicago could possibly make a comeback, and Dallas could possibly make a comeback. So I honestly think that the Nashville was one of the losers in this draft.
I would say the same. I would go 3 winners. I would say the exact same thing that you said. I think the Bruins, Leafs, and Isles really made some impressive additions. Loser, I would go with the Blues. I was expecting the Blues to do a little bit more. I don't know. I mean, Calgary maybe? You're getting rid of a good backup goalie. Now you have Jacob Markstrom. You know, unless they just don't see themselves pushing for a playoff spot at this point. So,
and also a quick trade that the Flames did make was they got rid of Sam Bennett in exchange for it was Sam Bennett and a 2022 6th-round pick in exchange for prospect Emil Heineman and a 2022 2nd-round pick. Okay. I think Florida won that trade. You know, you get a very good Swedish prospect and then a 2nd-round pick next year.
I agree. And I think for my 3rd loser, I'm probably going to stick in the Canadian division for this one. And this is a trade that we really didn't even touch upon that much. Vancouver. I think the whole Gaudette for Highmore deal was absolutely ridiculous. I don't see how you – I think Adam Gaudette put up, I want to say close to 40 points last season. And now Matt Highmore, I don't even think has put up 20 in his entire career. So I don't see how this is a win for the Vancouver Canucks. I don't know.
Yeah. Adam Gaudette last year in 59 games, 12 goals, 21 assists for 33 points. That's not bad.
Not bad at all.
That's not bad for what? He's probably playing 3rd line, maybe.
I would say so. Third or 4th line.
So I would say, yeah, Gaudette's still a good player.
Solid player overall, but again, we're not GM, so we're not gonna criticize any of these moves. Well, we're almost out of time. Before we wrap up this show, we're just gonna run through the scores for tonight real quick. 7 p.m. we got Detroit and Carolina. 7 p.m. Chicago and the Columbus Blue Jackets. Toronto, Montreal at 7 o'clock as well. Rounding out the 7 o'clock schedule, we got Winnipeg and Ottawa. 9 p.m. Arizona at Colorado. 10 p.m. Vegas and LA. And rounding out the schedule at the 10:30 p.m. Eastern slot, we got Anaheim and San Jose. So we got a very good lineup of games tonight. Andrew, you got any final words before we hop off here for the night?
I just want to say I think it was a pretty good first episode. Obviously trade deadline, packed as always. But I'm just really glad to be here, and I'm looking forward to do this, every week with you.
Yeah, 100%. And again, we just want to thank Linda, Mac, everybody here at the Northeast Streaming Sports Network for allowing us to have our own show. We're definitely excited for it, and we're definitely excited to put out more content for the world to see. So, with that said, I'm Carter Bentefenga. That's Andrew Marisi. Enjoy the games for tonight. We will be back on Wednesday. Good night, everybody.